I know you guys all live busy lives, and one of the things I'm sure when you get approached by someone like me, you say, well, we have a permit system, so we're all set. And appreciate the opportunity to be able to share how Camino is different, and especially the guide portion, which we'll be talking about today, uh, is replacing that manual process that is currently happening before an applicant or a potential applicant is ready to apply for a permit, right? And we're finding a lot of manual processes out there in both building and special events and business licensing. And I know we have a bunch of those people on today. But let's jump in. Really, the goal today is to talk about how we manage these information gatherers. And as you are, there's a lot of large cities and counties online today. And with that, there's even more questions and even more a need to be able to manage these information gatherers on a in an automatic and systematic way. These are the people that, they don't have any construction background. They're certainly not ready to apply for a permit. They're kind of gathering information. They may not ever do this, and they're calling in asking for information. Hey, what are my setbacks going to be? What are the fees going to be if I did this, or requirements? And they don't know, right? And the challenge today with cities and counties, and I talk to a lot of you that say, well, we have all that information online, right? And you do. It's all out there, zoning maps and documents and forms and fee schedules. The challenge for the average resident is it's just really overwhelming for them. And really, they kind of get information overload. Does this all apply to me? And it doesn't. I've seen some websites with 50 to 60 forms on a single page, and they don't know, and they end up having a hard time, and invariably they're calling you guys, right? And from you guys, it's a manual process to gather this information up because it's constantly changing. And with the permit department, or whether it's a special event department or a business licensing department, they have their challenges too, right? In the sense of there's a lack of consistency in enforcement. One of the things I hear across the country is individuals gaming the system, right? Calling into multiple permit techs, hoping to get a better answer on their project, and they'll use that one, right? And the challenge with that is it's just taking up 3, 4, 5 times the amount of your time, and not a very fun thing to go through. But there is no, single source of the truth, right? In the sense of, being able to know exactly in those situations. It is, people have different ideas. I mean, there is a single source, but it doesn't exist today. And customers can't retain everything they hear. Invariably, when they're gathering information, the permit tech has a lot of great information, but it might include some random PDF documents, and then some additional information that they're going to have to scribble down and try to keep track of it. And it's hard for these people to retain everything. So every process is different, right? If you're doing this project in a flood zone or in a historical zone, all bets are off. We got to do some different things in that situation. And then it's hard for the permit department to keep up with these constantly changing regulations, whether it be fee schedules or building codes that are changing. It's hard to keep up, and errors can happen in those situations. We also have, new staff is coming on, and training them is difficult. The challenge invariably is, the building official knows the processes. There might be a permit tech staff that's been there for 10 or 20 years that knows it, but there's a bunch of people that know it pretty well, and there's opportunities for mistakes. But the challenge is there's still the the actual permitted projects that you need to focus on, right? And I've been talking with some cities and counties. One county in Florida, 50% of their time was answering residents' questions on projects that aren't even applied for yet. 50%. That was a big number, but usually invariably it comes to be around 20 to 30% of your time is spent answering these questions. So as much as we're trying, these people keep coming and the calls keep coming, for those questions before they're ready to apply for a permit. Interestingly enough, this is actually the line for a permit department in, I believe it was Georgia, which was pretty impressive. So some keys that we've in our efforts, some keys for developing excellent service in in your department when it comes to this is being able to identify challenges early, right? Items like, hey, your property is in a flood zone, or your project isn't zoned for that, or in counties, many times with incorporated cities, the area they're responsible looks a little like Swiss cheese, and there's a lot of times people are calling in and they're not even part of the county, they're part of an incorporated city within the county. But being able to identify that early and provide clear direction, right? Tailored to their specific project or zoning, organized breakdown of what they will require, and also being consistent when enforcing code, right? Don't allow people to be able to game the system. It's going to be consistent, if they call one person or the next, and also offer service at all hours. Customers love the ability to be able to log in at 6 o'clock in the morning before they go to work, or at 6 o'clock at night afterwards, and to be able to have all their questions answered, right? So give them that option. And what we'll be talking about today with Camino, that's what we do, right? Camino takes all those regulations and handouts that you have on your website. We also bring in GIS into our system to know flood zones, historical zones, city or county limits, etc. But also, most importantly, bring in your staff knowledge, right? Everyone has this up in their head as to how this would go, and now bringing that into a system that can manage that and share that with everyone. So how does it work? And I will tell you, I talk with people and I say, well, we have this building guide or business license guide. And they say, well, we have that. And I say, what is that? And they say, well, it's a static kind of PDF, just checklist. And I said, okay, is it always the same in every instance? And they're like, well, no, it's not. And so that becomes a challenge. Another department had their guide was a 21-page document that tried to bring every nuance into play. And the challenge was no one read it because it was 21 pages and they'd end up calling them anyway. But with Camino, we're bringing in your GIS layers. So we don't have to ask them, are you in a flood zone, or are you in a historical district, or is your property even zoned for this type of work? We just say, what's your address, right? And we're also, based on the different type of permit they're applying for, or business license, we ask specific questions, right? Simple questions that a resident can answer. How big is your shed? Or those simple types of questions. And at the end of the day, from that, we lay out a guide customized just to them. So the guide itself is a information only tool, or service that, is replacing obviously this manual pulling of PDF documents and scribbling on sheets of paper. And it's a standalone system outside your permit system. So there really isn't a need for integration with whatever permit system you have. We do at the end of our guide many times recommend that we can link to training on your permit system, or even link to the permit system, so that, not that that's truly integration, but tying them back. So let's say a week or so, or 2 weeks later, after they generated their guide for their information, they're ready to go. We can link them over there, and they're off to the races with your permit system. We also offer, we're not going to talk about it today, but we offer an application portal, which uses the intelligence of the guide to be able to know exactly what forms and what fees and what documents need to be uploaded. So it makes for a very easy user interface on the front end, so that their experience can be, enjoyable on the, for the applicants. This is very helpful for people that have maybe older permit systems they're still happy with, that don't have a front end portal. Or we have had instances, Alameda, California, as an example, had a big permit system with a front end portal, but residents were making so many errors and doing things incorrectly that it was creating a backlog for them. It was actually a 4-week backlog. And by bringing in our application portal, they were able to eliminate that backlog, because they were receiving complete submittals. Last thing, which we've been kind of touching on, is that same piece of the configurability of Camino, right? We're talking today about building permits, but just as easily, our guide can be configured for special events, planning and zoning, even business licensing, because the information for those people is also, it depends, right? If you're having a special event and you have alcohol, it's different from a special event without alcohol, and there's different needs there. With Camino, we have over 100 different agencies, and the benefit there with a hosted solution is you are getting the benefit of the insight from everyone else. Everyone's sharing great ideas on how to improve the guide, and we don't use them all, but those changes that we do make, and we're making monthly, if not quarterly, changes and updates, everyone receives, right? So it's constantly improving. Some of our customers, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, recently signed on with a special event permit system. Surprise of Arizona also has a special event permit system. Pompano Beach, Florida, is on with a business license system, a complete system to manage that. But also some large entities like Fairfax County, Santa Clarita, California, Charles County, Maryland, are using our guide, informational guide, with their existing permit system. Last piece before we jump into the demo, and really a big recommendation on new technology you're bringing on, is to have a system with no coding, right? So anyone, doesn't have to even be members of your IT staff, permit techs in your department, if they have the correct access and have been trained on the logic of Camino, they can make changes, right? So if there is a building code change or a fee schedule change, they can very easily go into the guide and make a small tweak so that the guide is up to date for everyone, right? And that concern of everyone being up to date on the regulations isn't there, because the system is up to date. But good. And if there are questions, if there is something I went over too quick and there is questions, definitely feel free to use either the chat functionality or the questions and answers, and I will work to answer those questions too. Also open to separate demos if there is something more specific you wanted to take a look at. But here is an example of one of our guide customers. This is the Charles County, Maryland. They have Energov for their permit system. And one of the neat things with Camino for your IT staff, because we are hosted, there is really not a lot of IT things they need to do, which IT staff usually like. They got enough to do. And really what it comes down to, the biggest piece we need from them is to build a button to take the individual to Camino. With Santa Clarita, they set it up as a step 1, step 2, where step 1 is the guide and step 2 is applying using Energov. In Santa Clarita, California, the IT staff put this big button in and set it up. So when people call in with questions, they refer them to the guide first to answer those questions. And it's for Santa Clarita, it's helped to reduce those calls by 30%. If the resident were to come in and click on the button for the guide, they would come to a landing page a lot like this. Now, again, Camino is very configurable. We have a lot of customers, Santa Clarita as an example, that only has residential building project button on this page because that's their focus, right? So this is a demo site, so it has everything from special events to opening a business, etc. But you don't need everything. If you maybe just had residential and you wanted a special event guide, you could have those two things there. But in coming into residential building projects, the goal with Camino is let's make it simple for them to drill down and find their type of work, right? This page is also configurable by you. So if you wouldn't organize it in this way, you don't have to. Camino also even gives you a Google-like search bar up here so that if, as an example, I come in and say, well, gee, I'm looking to put in a pool, I could type in pool and Camino comes up saying, well, are you looking for a pool house or a pool and a hot tub, right? And I can proceed forward that way. But here, I'm just going to say, well, it's a new accessory structure. And again, we're drilling down what type of accessory structure is it, and this is configurable. But in this example, we're going to say it's a ADU, right? A lot of ADUs across the country. And in this example now, Camino is asking for the address. And we're going to say 639 Ashton. And it would have drop downs in and around your area for drop down options. We can also select parcels if you didn't have an address at that location. But in this example, we're selecting this address and hitting search. Camino puts down a big button over the location, saying, okay, is that your house? And they would confirm. In confirming, Camino is already customizing the guide. It knows whether this address is even in the city and will tell them quickly if it's not. But also it knows, if it's in a flood zone or what zoning this has. Now we go into those simple questions, right? The goal is let's have these questions so simple that a 50-year-old lady at 6 o'clock at night doesn't get stumped, right? She can answer these questions. And more than likely, these are the questions that your permit techs are offering or asking, I should say. So, does it impact an existing sidewalk? Does the new structure have sprinklers? Are there any trees on or near the site? Is the ADU larger than 200 square feet? And are you going to have any kitchen or gas appliances? You can see we also have this I'm not sure how to answer it button, and you could have this for every question, and they can click on it and you can give them additional information, whether it be in text format like you see here, or an attachment or a hyperlink to get them to more information with that ultimate goal of they can answer their own questions, right? So in this example, I answered it. I submit my answers. Now Camino wants to generate the fees that are going to be paid on this. And in this example, it's a simple question on project valuation. But if you have a complex fee schedule, well, won't make it that big, we can ask the necessary questions and do the necessary calculations to generate those fees. So now in submitting our answers, we have our guide. So now in probably 90 seconds, a resident with no construction experience can generate a customized guide of all the information they're going to need, right? So they can see at a glance how much these fees, how much their fees are going to be if they apply. They can also see, what to expect, required applications, et cetera, even a breakdown of the fees. But we'll go in and let's get started on this particular guide. So again, information only. In this example, we're letting them know, hey, your project is in a flood zone. And with this, there might be additional steps that need to occur because they're in a flood zone, and that would be included there. And we're also in this example letting them know that this project is zoned properly for an ADU, which is one hurdle that needs to be kind of overcome, so to speak. We also we're sharing some forms that are on your website, but now instead of sharing 50 forms, we're only sharing the forms that are applicable for them in their situation. So these frequently asked questions, they could download them, print them off, and these are applicable for them, but they wouldn't be applicable for other people that aren't interested in an ADU. We also have setbacks. So now instead of them calling you for setbacks, they can, because we know the zoning of this property, they can get their setbacks, know what those are. We even in this example have a link to additional information on setbacks. One of the things you see on every page here is this comment section, and the ability for the individuals to be able to ask questions. So in the example here on setbacks, I say, I have a question, and I go into it right here, and I can post it. Camino has the intelligence now to know who to send or what department to send this question to. In this example, we're going to be sending it to planning and zoning, and they will receive, whether it's a group or an individual in planning and zoning, will receive an email with this question. And so now either on their phone or on their laptop, they can start a conversation with this applicant. Maybe asking a few more questions before they give their answers, and then finally giving their answers. But one of the nice things is we are storing these questions and answers with the guide on the back end, right? So if, let's say a month from now, there's some dispute and they say, well, planning and zoning said I could go right up to the property line with my pool, so it's on them. Well, you could look back in the guide and say, actually, they said you could not. And you have that backup now of that conversation that occurred. When we talk about, now we're talking about, hey, applications you're going to need. So in this example, when and if they do apply for a permit, they're going to need to apply for a building permit and a tree removal permit, right? Because they said, yes, they had some trees that are on or near the job site. This is a huge one. As little as that seems, that's a huge one for a lot of cities and counties. Sometimes people forget to ask about the trees. The inspector goes out on the job site and stops everything saying, you need a tree permit, and everyone's frustrated, right? Because no one told them. Now we can go into, hey, what's required? If you do this, what are you going to require? In this example, we're talking about a plan requirement. You can even give them an example that they can download of plan, the format of the plans that you want them in, plan requirements for an ADU. And again, specific to them, right? And this isn't something we'd share with everyone. And then even in this example, aesthetic requirements, structural engineering requirements with links to additional sheets that are probably on your website today. We also, again, have that breakdown of the fees. They're not going to be paying the fees with us, but they can see, what the fees are going to be. And, and so they're not shocked when they get to your website or get to apply. We also share this one because one of the neat things with Camino's guide is agencies outside the city or county can also participate in our guide, right? In Santa Clarita, the county is responsible for the fire department. And so the county is keeping the guide updated on fire restriction, fire construction requirements if the individual's in a fire zone type of thing. But the important thing is outside agencies can also participate, and be part of this guide. And we share here how in this example we have when you're ready, click here and we have a link to your permit system, right? Take them right over. We could also include there a link to some training on your permit system to get them trained up, right, in a nice organized fashion. The last thing I wanted to share with everyone here is invariably within a big city or county, you have people who are afraid of the internet, right? And they don't want to touch it. They just want your help. And that's fine. And it happens. And they come in or they call in. And one of the neat things with Camino that we're finding is in the example of Santa Clarita, what they have little kiosks set up. And so the permit tech will come out and just open up the guide, go through it just like we went through, but they're kind of driving it and asking the resident the questions and answering in the guide. And in generating this guide, they now, as you can see right here, can download this in a PDF format. So now all that information we've been going over with the same attachments and setbacks and the fees, et cetera, can be quickly printed out for this individual. They can leave with an organized guide, or you can email it to them if you're on the phone, right? But the real powerful piece is, number one, you're comfortable. The guide is that single source of the truth. They didn't forget anything, even if Mary's only been with the city for a week. There's no fear Mary's going to mess this up. She's just going through those simple questions and putting the address in, and being able to have all that there for you. So we have that. This is the front end piece, obviously there, but now we can also go into the back end of the system. So as permit staff, you might get a call from someone, and we have all our submissions here. And you might get a call from someone saying, "Hey, I just generated a guide and I have a question, on what was given to me." Well, you can very easily search for their name or their address, or even the type of permit they're applying for. But in this example, this is me. This is the one we just did. And you can click and come in and see all the information on this individual. So all the information we shared with them about being in a flood zone and being zoned properly, or those frequently asked questions, you could open up and talk them through. Maybe they have a question on what was here in here as well. But also you have a backup of what was given to them. And when we talked earlier about sharing that conversation, over here on the side, on the submission details, you have my name and, information there, my address. You can also see other submissions at this location. So this is a demo site, so I've used this location a few times. But the other neat thing that we were talking about earlier is that conversation. Now, that was just a simple question that I had, but there's that conversation that happened where maybe planning and zoning told them something about setbacks, and you can fall back on that information and see the information that was shared with them, on setbacks. If they say, hey, the setbacks you shared with me weren't right, well, you could click on them and look at them and say, well, yes, they were. There's that conversation we were having as well. As we go through this as well, you'll also see Camino has an active map of the location. And here we share GIS information on the address. I have Santa Clarita's website up, and you can see they have all their GIS data loaded. And you can see all this information, which might be helpful for your staff in, asking more, answering more questions there as well. So everything's there for you to be able to share and come back on. With Camino, though, as well, we also have an active map where the city or county can see all the guides that were being considered, right? So you can very easily slice and dice this information. As an example, we can say, hey, I just want to see over the last month. I want to see, I just want to see ones where the guide was provided. And you can even go as far as even filtering down to say, I just want to see new custom homes that are being considered around the county or the city. So you can filter and slice and dice this information the way that you want. Then you can come in, click on a specific project, see the basic details on it. And if you want, click on it and go into the guide itself, right? And how all the information that was shared there with them, right? With it, Camino also is sharing the questions that were asked of them and how they answered them, right? So you have, again, someone says, well, no one told me about tree permits that I had to apply for. You could go back to the guide and say, well, when we asked you if you had trees on or near the site, you answered no. And that's why we didn't tell you about a tree permit. So you have that fallback there as well. Lastly, wanted to share a report, and this report is on the usage of the system. So this is actually the city of Santa Clarita's report. They have about 200,000 people there. And you can see there over the last month, they've had 394 people come to their guide, 289 started a guide, and 125 completed a guide, right? In between there, we have different steps where people we were waiting for an address or whatever else. But one of the things we do with each of our customers is meet with them monthly on ways of improving your guide so that people don't stop in certain areas. Because sometimes it's just because the guide got a little confusing and so the person stopped. So let's find ways of simplifying it so they can use it more effectively. In Santa Clarita, you can also see people are coming into the guide early morning. My goodness, there's some people coming in at 3 o'clock in the morning, but certainly 6 o'clock in the morning, and even after 6 at night, coming in, getting their own questions answered. In McKinney, Texas, as an example, they have Energov is their permit system and are using our guide. They have found 30% of their guide usage is after hours. And so the customers are really happy. They don't have to wait till you guys opened up and potentially be on hold or be in your office waiting and taking time off from work. They can just do it after, in their pajamas in their house after work, so to speak. But you have that feedback as well as a feedback on top submissions and, of what's going out there, information that might be helpful. All right. Last thing I wanted to share now is when we talk about our rule builder. The The rule builder, and the reason I just wanted to share it is to share how easy Camino is to use. Literally, you do not need any IT people or coders. Santa Clarita, literally their permit staff built their guide from the ground up because it was that easy, right? But also maintaining the system is just as important, right? You're not at at the beck and call of a coder that might be busy. If you need to make a change, you can make it yourself. So our guide is broken down into submission types and steps. And for informational only guides, steps are just information, right? If we were talking about an application portal, steps could be information or filling out a form or adding a document or paying a fee. And with a full permit system, steps could be approving documents and reviews and inspections could be additional steps, right? But going back to just guide only, and here we have this, creating an ADU, there are 3 rules, right? Rule 1 is these steps will appear in a guide of this submission type, right? So always we're going to have these steps will occur. And you can see how very easily we can point to specific steps, or we can edit those connections, disconnect, add to new steps, whatever. But the real power of Camino and how we customize each guide is in example here of rule 2. Rule 2 is these steps will only appear based on how they answer the question. In this example, does your existing structure have fire sprinklers, right? So if they answer yes, they do the steps. If they answer no, they don't do the steps. The steps could also be based on GIS layers, right? So if they're in a flood zone, you do these steps. If they're not in a flood zone, you don't do these steps for this specific permit type. But we can also very easily edit the conditions here. And the only reason I like to share is just so you can see there's no coding involved in this. Here's the question. Does the existing structure have fire sprinklers? And in the example here, it's a question, it's a yes or no question, but we can also ask number questions. How big is your fence, right? If it's 3 feet or shorter, there's no permit required. If it's taller, it requires a permit, and we walk them through, right? So we can ask a number question, multiple choice that they can pick from, whatever. And you can see here, it includes steps. You include the steps if the answer is equal to yes. So very easy to do. We did have a question came up on sharing a ballpark range about how long it takes to set up the rules, knowing it depends on the size and scope of the municipality. Great question. We have 2 options. We have a Camino-led implementation. Obviously, by the name, Camino manages the implementation. Obviously, we're working with your staff, whoever those people are that have all this knowledge in their head. But important to note that the time of your staff, because everyone's really busy today, it only comes out to be about an hour a week where we sit down, we share what we've built so far, get feedback, get more insight, and continue to build. But in the question about how long it takes, implementation is actually very fast. I mean, we talked to some larger cities and counties where the permit system took years to implement. With Camino, our guide takes about 3 months to implement. We had one city a larger city that implemented us in 1 month. That was a all hands on deck where everyone was building as well as Camino to meet a specific deadline. But yeah, it's not super hard. The other nice thing from your question is we can share other guides that have been built in and around the area. or even, in speaking to you on the kickoff, we might identify a city that sounds really similar to how you want it to be set up, share that, and we can literally copy and paste that entire guide over to you, and then work on just tweaking it to meet your city or county, right? And obviously putting in your forms, or maybe adding a few things, et cetera. But we can get a big jump start there as well. Yeah, the nice thing is, and if it is a Camino-led implementation, we make a point at the end to train a group of people of your choosing who you want to have access to the back end and be able to modify it afterwards, right? If there's a quick building code change, they can go in and make that change to tweak it in that way. So, right, very helpful information there, and thanks for the question. But yeah, that is really about it for me on the side. Here's another question in regards to, is there a limit to the number of staff that for admin? And there is none. And as many people as you're comfortable. One of the things also that I can share with you is you're in control of your users, right? So you have the ability to add users, delete users, and great question actually is, you have unlimited users, right? So you don't have to worry about, I only want to give this many people this access because I only have so many. The more the merrier, right? I mean, if the county, can be involved as well in the health department, great, in that way. So we will not hold you back on that, and we'll train all those people on that back end portion as well. So, yep. And so in kind of finalizing things here for sure, if there are additional questions, one of the other nice things about Camino is our price, right? I can't go through the whole pricing schedule, but certainly give you guys an idea, as an example, with a city of between 50 and 100,000 people, an annual subscription with a Camino-led implementation would be $29,000 a year, right? And that includes the implementation cost, right? So there'd be no one-time implementation. It's all bundled together there for you. And another question just came up saying, can the staff set it up themselves? I guess with a bit of training from Camino. And yes, that is one of the beauties of having this no-code system that's very easy to use. In fact, a majority of our customers have implemented themselves. We have some customers that are just really too busy and their permit staff is going 100 miles an hour. But Santa Clarita, with 200,000 people, implemented their guide themselves. One of the neat things as well here is the guides. When we talk about information only, you can go and access a guide, so being able to go to Santa Clarita's guide and see how it's built. Charles County, Maryland, Memphis, Tennessee has our guide, Fairfax County, Virginia, but you can go to the guide and use it, right? Really the only thing you need is an address, so, but even because Camino gives drop-down options, when it comes to the address, you can type in like 1-2, and it might give you a drop-down option within the city or county limits that you can use and move on. But you're really not differing from a permit system. You're not breaking anything by going in and generating a guide. I also just wanted to share one of the pieces we're also going to be sitting down with you guys on is each month on a monthly value report. Now, this is Fairfax County, Virginia. They have 1.2 million people, and they have a guide with us. We look at just kind of the activity for the month, but also try to convert that into hours saved and time saved each month, right? So, and what we're finding from our customer base is some huge returns, right? New Westminster, which is actually only about 35,000 people in British Columbia, saved 2 weeks of work. I think we talked about McKinney and 30% of their the use of the system happening after hours. Kitsap County, which is one of our raving fans, is saving 17 weeks of work in a month with our system, and pretty much every city around them is using Camino now because they're seeing those savings. So some real and one of the pieces that I emphasize as I'm talking with customers is, you know, the nice thing is it is an annual subscription. So let us prove our worth, because we're finding the savings are in time and money is overwhelming the annual subscription, to say the very least.